You better not break my mother into this!
You know what I did?
You better not!
I broke that fly over there.
Oh!
Put that brother next to it.
China and India, the duo that would rule the world. China and India are two of the largest and fastest growing economies in the world, with a combined population of almost 3 billion people. Both countries have made significant strides in economic development over the past few decades, with China emerging as the largest economy in Asia and India as the third largest. However, there are vast differences between the two countries in terms of economic policies, growth strategies, development models, and the challenges they face as they both run the race for the #1 spot in Asia and potentially the world. When we look at China and India, we see a massive people, and that massive people represents potential and opportunity. China has built itself as a hub of cheap labor in the manufacturing field, while India has entrenched itself as a key player in the information services industry, including customer service and tech tuition, and its reliance on agriculture. Stay until the end of this video to find out who will win this fight. India's economy grew by 7% last year, making it one of the best performing economies in the world, while China's economy grew by only 3%, the slowest pace since 1976, excluding the pandemic-affected fiscal year. One factor contributing to India's economic growth is its ability to continue growing despite rising prices, with the country's central bank responding by raising interest rates. On the other hand, China's economic slowdown has been primarily attributed to its zero-COVID strategy and reduced global manufacturing demand, of which 40% are ordered from the United States. Despite China's larger economy, India's recent economic growth has been more robust than ever. Around 1950, both China and India were recovering from war and unrest and working to rebuild their economies. India had a more advanced economic system, while China was working to catch up. After Mao's death in 1978, Deng Xiaoping became the new leader and initiated the Boluan Fansheng program to restore order. Xiaoping's policies opened China to the world, and the 1979 Equity Joint Venture Law allowed foreign capital and Western companies to enter China, transforming its economy. The communist regime in China began to liberalize agriculture, implementing a one-child policy and investing in infrastructure and coastal development. In contrast, India adopted a socialist economic model under Pandit Nehru that did not encourage wealth creation or large private enterprise. The Indian economy grew at a rate of around 3.5% during the 1960s and 1970s, while its population grew by more than 2.5%. In 1987, the nominal GDP of both countries was nearly equal. However, by 2019, China's nominal GDP was 4.78 times greater than India's, and its PPP GDP was 2.38 times greater. China is now almost 4.61 times richer than India in nominal terms. In 2021, India's GDP was composed of agriculture at 15.4%, industry at 23%, and services at 61.5%, while China's GDP was composed of agriculture at 8.3%, industry at 39.5%, and services at 52.2%. With a growth rate of approximately 10% over the past 3 decades, China has lifted more than 800 million people out of poverty. But the majority of all that is changing in favor of India and its new approach to doing things. India has a higher GDP growth rate than China. This means that India's economy has been growing faster than that of China for the past few years. In 2022, India's GDP growth rate was around 7%, while China's GDP growth rate was just 3%. This shows that India's economy is growing faster and has the potential to catch up with China's in the future. India's demographics are also one of the reasons why it is expected to overtake China to become the world's factory. India has a very large population of young people, with the median age there being 28, while China has a much older workforce with a median age of 38. This directly translates to the productivity of each of the countries. India will have a higher level of productivity than China. This is due in part to China's one-child policy, which has been in existence for decades and has led to a rapidly aging population, leaving very few people in the labor force. You could also look at the fact that younger people tend to consume more than older people. So India, with its vibrant labor force, will experience a greater demand for goods and services, causing businesses to expand and produce more to satisfy their customers. Comparing the public debts of India and China, we have about 19.2% for India and also 21.4% for China. Since India has lower public debt, it has more freedom of spending and more fiscal space to invest in infrastructure, which will make the business environment more favorable. For example, the higher fiscal space India has could be used to develop more airports and roads to make it more cost-effective to transport goods and therefore reduce production costs. About 6 million students graduate from college every year in India. Now, looking at a company like Apple, this kind of expertise is what is needed. Apple can benefit from an Indian workforce that is specialized in skills in areas such as software development, engineering, and design. These skills are essential for the production of high-end products like iPhones, and a skilled workforce can ensure that the manufacturing process is carried out with precision and efficiency. China is a heavily indebted country, but it also depends a lot on its external environment for essentials. China is the largest importer of food and energy from countries like Russia. Since 2022, China has been the world's largest importer of oil. China sources about 70% of its oil from other countries, especially those in the Middle East and Russia. With the Russian invasion of Ukraine, the supply of two of the most important commodities in China is at risk. China's increasing dependency on the external world is a major factor that is a potential threat to its plans to rise to be the #1 economy in the world. But India, on the other hand, seems to be in the right position to overtake China, becoming the next #1. The production shift out of China to other countries such as Vietnam and India is a trend that has been rising in recent years. There are many reasons why companies are choosing to move their production to these countries.
It's my life, it's now or never.
Labor costs in China have been rising rapidly in recent years, making it less attractive for companies to manufacture there. In contrast, countries like Vietnam and India offer cheaper labor, which makes them a more cost-effective option for production. For example, in China, the minimum monthly salary of workers is currently $338, while in India, it is around $65. Secondly, trade tensions between China and other countries, particularly the United States, have also played a role in the production shift. As trade tensions have increased between these two countries, companies have been looking for ways to diversify their supply chains and decrease their reliance on China in order to prevent any misfortunes to their business that may arise from this war. The Indian manufacturing industry, even though not in an ideal state, has gained recognition in some aspects of the sector, such as pharmaceuticals and textiles. But for India to be the global manufacturing hub, there is still a long way to go. Most factories in India do not have basic ISO and BSI certifications. However, most of the factories in China have many certifications, including CE and FDA, of which India has just a handful. The nature of India's infrastructure and electricity supply is also another issue, hindering its success. The erratic supply in India increases the cost of production and the cost of running factories, with a power gap of more than 10% and the lowest per capita electricity consumption in the world. Also, inadequate infrastructure, such as transport systems, cause delays and efficient transport of raw and finished goods, increasing costs. Trains moving from Shanghai to Hangzhou take only 1 hour to get to their destination, with a distance of 200 kilometers. However, the same travel distance in India takes over 3 hours, even with the fastest train available. In the quest to transform India's manufacturing into a more innovative and technologically centered one, the government launched the Make in India campaign. This campaign encourages companies to manufacture their products in India and also incentivizes dedicated investments in manufacturing. The Atmanirbhar Bharat initiative was also launched to serve the same course. However, this initiative was due to the COVID pandemic and was aimed at making the country more self-reliant in every aspect. More measures, such as reduction in corporate taxes and tax concessions to reduce import bills. So, As you may remember, back in 2018 and 2019, former US President Donald Trump levied heavy tariffs on China to counter what he saw as unfair trade deals with the US.
I love them. China. 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 I have to have my China. China. China because China.
This led to retaliation from Beijing and the beginning of a trade war. Many companies began discussing moving their supply chains out of China to avoid geopolitical risks. However, it was really the pandemic that drove home the importance of not relying on one country for its supply chain. China's strict zero-COVID policy resulted in disruptions to global supply chains, causing many companies to reevaluate their dependence on Chinese production lines. One such company is tech giant Apple, which has been hit hard by China's pursuit of zero-COVID. As a result, Apple is now looking to shift its production out of China to other Asian countries. But where should they go? India is a top pick for many companies, including major Apple supplier Foxconn and other chip makers. India has a large labor pool, a long history of manufacturing, and government support for boosting industry and exports. However, the move to India is easier said than done. While India has many advantages, including demographics, geography, and infrastructure, it doesn't yet have the extensive value chain that China has built up over the years. This takes time to develop, and manufacturers need to start with the assembly line before building up local supply lines for finished products. But India is not only a production hotspot, it is also a consumption hotspot. This is due to its growing middle class and young population. By 2030, nearly 80% of households in India will be middle income and expected to drive 75% of consumer spending. Regarding age, about 26% of the Indian population is below 14. This makes India a large consumer base for most companies, especially companies in the technology space. This powerful combination of a rapidly growing middle class and young population puts India in the right spot to become a very powerful economic player in the world by 2030. Bailan. Why should I work hard? After all, it won't pay off. This mentality has become rife in China, with young people refusing to put in their best at their jobs, refusing to find jobs entirely. More than 18% of the young people between 18 and 24 in China are jobless. This has led to the Tangping, which means lying flat, or Bailan, which also means let it rot trends. A growing number of young people are rejecting the traditional work culture of long hours and prioritizing career success over personal life. This shift is partly due to the economic uncertainty in the country, which has made it difficult for young people to find secure, stable employment. As a result, many are seeking more balance and fulfillment in their lives by pursuing alternative paths, such as starting their own businesses or pursuing creative careers. Part of the reason young people have given up is the lack of ability to buy their dream homes, which is essential to Chinese culture and may even prevent you from being able to marry. Comparatively, unemployment among Indian youth has also been a pressing concern. According to the Center for Monitoring Indian Economy, CMIE, the unemployment rate for those aged between 15 and 29 in India stood at around 22% in 2021. While the cultural context is different from China, young people in India face similar issues of economic uncertainty and limited job opportunities. The Indian job market is highly competitive, with a large number of graduates vying for a limited number of positions. The Chinese real estate industry is currently experiencing what experts call a bubble, and it is likely to burst soon. The bubble is a situation where the prices of housing continue to increase rapidly. The fast increase in housing prices in China has been fueled by multiple factors, including urbanization, foreign investments, and limited investment opportunities. The Chinese middle class is part of the main driving forces of this bubble, as they seek to invest in property as a way to protect their financial futures from inflation. However, easy credit and speculative buying have caused overbuilding and overvaluation of properties, leading to concerns that the housing market is experiencing a bubble that may burst, resulting in a significant correction in prices. A housing market crash could have serious implications for the economy, as it is a significant driver of economic growth. This could lead to a reduction in construction activity, job losses, and decreased consumer spending, which could lead to a broader economic downturn. The Evergrande Foshan and the Evergrande Oasis, both high-end housing Chinese projects which were to be completed by Evergrande, one of China's biggest real estate developers, had to be stopped. The Evergrande real estate company in China over the years has been expanding very aggressively, acquiring vast lands and taking on ambitious construction projects. However, the company has also taken on a significant amount of debt to fund its expansion, leading to concerns about its financial stability. In September 2021, Evergrande faced a severe liquidity crisis as it struggled to meet its debt obligations. The company had over $300 billion in liabilities, including bonds, bank loans, and unpaid bills to suppliers, and was reportedly at risk of defaulting on its debts. This crisis has led to widespread concerns about the impact on the Chinese economy, as well as on the global financial system. Also, commercial housing sales reached $2.7 trillion in 2020, with 70% of China's wealth stored in the real estate market. However, with China putting all its economic eggs in the real estate basket, any little change in the real estate industry could have a very huge impact on the rest of the economy, which is definitely not a good thing. On the other hand, India's real estate market is adapting and evolving to address its unique challenges. Recent reforms, such as RERA and GST, have increased transparency and accountability, boosting investor confidence. Furthermore, the government's focus on affordable housing projects like the PMAY initiative is driving demand in urban areas and catering to the needs of the growing middle class. Although India's real estate market still faces obstacles, it continues to show resilience and a promising outlook for sustainable growth. Super-speed railroad employed millions, helped China avoid the 2008 recession, and helped industries get out of potential insolvency. Financed by debt of different types, the project soon started experiencing problems, mainly because of ticket prices and the fact that it linked secondary cities instead of main cities. Just like that project, China is full of many such projects, which have little to no economic impact yet cost the country billions. But the biggest threat to China yet is its sour bilateral relations with the United States. In contrast, India's debt story is different. With a lower debt-to-GDP ratio, India relies on domestic borrowing, reducing exposure to external risks. India is actively tackling debt through fiscal consolidation, attracting foreign investments and boosting economic growth. In light of where the Indian economy is expected to be by 2023, it has been forecasted that it'll be the third largest economy by the end of this decade, if it retains the steady growth it is currently experiencing. For the rest of the decade, while it is possible for the Chinese economy to continue its growth or transform altogether due to the recent shift to service-based industries, it is very likely to experience an economic slowdown due to factors like reduced global demand, high public debt, increased tension with the US, and an aging population. On the contrary, India's economy is likely to experience more rapid growth in the coming years due to increasing consumer demand and major economic reforms by the government, as India focused on the development of high-tech industries and more service-related industries. If India is to surpass the Chinese economy, now is the right time. Given India's highly youthful population, growing middle class, and taking advantage of the current economic situation in China. However, if India is not able to surpass China by 2030, it will likely be one of the major economic players in the world in the coming decade. Subscribe to Ape Finance for more in-depth economic breakdowns like this. What do you think about the ongoing fight of India and China? Write it in the comments. Thanks for watching until the end, and we will see you in the next one.